At first glance, owning a garbage company looks like one of the easiest businesses. People throw away trash. You pick it up, you dump it at a landfill, you get paid. Simple. Except that's not how the business actually works. Because here's something that sounds completely backwards. The companies making the most money from garbage aren't winning because they collect garbage. They're winning because they own the infrastructure behind it. The garbage is just what moves through it. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why buying a garbage truck is probably the least important part of starting a garbage company. If you stop and think about it, the business does seem almost too good to be true. Every house produces trash, every restaurant produces trash, every office, warehouse, supermarket, and factory produces trash. Unlike most businesses, demand doesn't depend on the economy. People throw things away whether the stock market is booming or crashing. On paper, it sounds like one of the safest businesses you could own. So naturally, the business plan seems obvious. Buy a garbage truck, hire a driver, find a few neighborhoods willing to pay for weekly pickup, empty their bins every week, take everything to the nearest landfill, get paid, repeat. But here's where almost every first-time operator gets it wrong. Buying a truck doesn't mean you've built a garbage company. It just means you've bought a very expensive truck. The real business starts the moment you ask a much harder question. How do you keep that truck making money every day? At first, the answer seems simple. Find customers. Fortunately, this is one of the few industries where demand already exists. You're not convincing people to produce garbage. You're competing for customers who already need someone to collect it. But not all customers are worth the same. Residential customers provide predictable, recurring monthly revenue. Once a neighborhood is on your route, many households stay for years unless prices rise significantly or service declines. Commercial customers are different. Restaurants, office buildings, apartment complexes, hospitals, they generate far more waste than a single home and often require multiple pickups every week. That also makes them significantly more valuable. Losing one large commercial account can hurt as much as losing dozens of residential customers. At this point, the business still looks fantastic. Your customers pay every month. Demand never disappears. Revenue is predictable. So where's the catch? The catch is that collecting garbage is only half the business. Every route eventually reaches the same moment. Your truck is full, and a full truck isn't making money anymore until you empty it. So every garbage company eventually runs into the same question. Where do you dump everything you've collected? Most people think the answer is simple. You drive straight to the landfill, dump the trash, and head back out to collect more. For a small local company, that might actually happen. But for the largest waste companies in America, that's usually not how the process works. Instead, the truck heads somewhere you've probably never heard of before. A transfer station. Think of it as a logistics hub for garbage. Instead of every truck driving all the way to a landfill, dozens of collection trucks from across the city unload their waste at a nearby transfer station. The garbage is then compacted and loaded into much larger trailers that can carry significantly more waste than a collection truck. At first, this might seem like an unnecessary extra step. Why unload the garbage just to load it onto another truck? The answer comes down to one thing: time. A garbage truck is one of the most expensive vehicles you'll ever own. Depending on the type and equipment, a new automated side loader can cost well over $300,000, and that's before you've hired a driver or put fuel in the tank. Every hour that truck spends driving to a distant landfill is an hour it isn't collecting trash and generating revenue. A transfer station solves that problem. Instead of spending hours traveling back and forth, the collection truck makes a short trip, unloads its waste, and gets straight back onto its route. Meanwhile, specialized long-haul trucks, which are cheaper to operate over long distances because they're built for transport rather than collection, take the waste to its final destination. That one change dramatically increases the number of customers a single garbage truck can service in a day. In other words, the transfer station doesn't just save fuel, it makes every collection truck more productive. And when you're operating hundreds or even thousands of trucks, a small improvement in productivity quickly turns into millions of dollars. But there's another reason transfer stations are so important. Not every landfill is close to the neighborhoods producing the waste. In fact, some cities don't have active landfills nearby at all. The garbage may need to travel dozens or even hundreds of miles before it can finally be disposed of. You don't want your most expensive trucks making that journey. You want them back in neighborhoods collecting more trash. By now, the business is starting to look very different. You're not just running garbage trucks, you're running a logistics network. But eventually, every load still reaches the same destination: the landfill. And this is where most people completely misunderstand how the waste business makes its money. because the landfill isn't just a place to dump garbage. For the companies that own them, it's one of the most valuable assets in the entire industry. Let's go back to your business. Right now, you've got trucks, you've got customers, you're collecting garbage every day, but you don't own a landfill, so every time one of your trucks unloads a load of trash, you pay a tipping fee. Depending on the state and the landfill, that fee typically ranges from around $30 to well over $100 per ton of waste. Now imagine your company is dumping 500 tons every day. At just $60 per ton, you're paying $30,000 every single day. That's nearly $11 million every year just to dispose of the garbage you've already collected. Naturally, every growing waste company asks the same question. What if we owned the landfill instead? That single decision changes the economics of the entire business. Instead of paying another company every time you dump a load of trash, you're paying yourself. The industry even has a name for it: internalization. The biggest waste companies don't just collect garbage. They collect it, transport it, dispose of it, and earn money at every step of the process. But even that isn't the biggest reason landfills are so valuable, because a landfill isn't really selling land. It's selling something far more valuable: space. Every empty cubic foot inside a permitted landfill can only be sold once. Once it's filled, it's gone forever. That empty space is inventory. That's why the companies that own the landfills don't just control where garbage ends up. They control the most valuable asset in the entire industry. Which raises the next question. If owning a landfill is such a massive advantage, why doesn't every garbage company build one? The answer is because building a landfill is nothing like building a warehouse, a factory, or even a truck depot. Finding the land is actually the easy part. Getting permission to bury millions of tons of waste there is the hard part. Before a single truck can unload its first load of garbage, years of work have already happened behind the scenes. The company has to study the geology of the site, the groundwater, nearby rivers and streams, local wildlife, traffic patterns, air quality. Engineers have to prove that the landfill can safely contain waste for decades without contaminating the surrounding environment. Then comes the permitting process. Depending on the state, securing approval for a new landfill can take 5 to 10 years, and in many cases even longer. And even if regulators approve the project, there's another obstacle: the people who live nearby. Almost everyone agrees society needs landfills. Almost nobody wants one built close to their home. It's known as the NIMBY effect: not in my backyard. Local residents often oppose new landfill projects over concerns about traffic, odors, noise, property values, or environmental risks. Public hearings can become political battles, lawsuits can delay projects for years, and many proposed landfills are never built at all. That's why new landfills are surprisingly rare. In many parts of the United States, existing landfills have become far more valuable simply because replacing them is so difficult. Think about what that means. If you're a small garbage company, you don't really get to choose where your trash goes. You take it to one of the few landfills that already exists. And if one of those landfills is owned by your competitor, you're helping fund the very company you're trying to compete against. That's an incredibly difficult position to be in, because while you're fighting for customers on the front end, they're making money from you on the back end. Suddenly, the industry starts to make a lot more sense. The biggest companies didn't become dominant because they collected the most trash. They became dominant because they controlled the hardest assets to replace. And once they owned those assets, the next step was obvious. Instead of building every new route from scratch, they started buying the companies that had already built them. If you look at the biggest waste companies in America, you'll notice something interesting. Most of them didn't become giants by putting more garbage trucks on the road. They became giants by buying the companies that already had trucks on the road. Imagine your waste management. A small family-owned garbage company has spent the last 20 years building routes across a fast-growing suburb. They've already convinced thousands of customers to trust them. Their trucks know every street. Their drivers know every customer. They have contracts, they have equipment, they have local relationships. Buying that business is often much faster and far less risky than trying to compete against it from scratch. And there's another advantage. Remember everything we've already built? The trucks, the routes, the transfer stations, the landfill. Now imagine plugging that newly acquired company into your existing network. Instead of paying another landfill to dispose of waste, those trucks now dump into your landfill. Instead of using someone else's transfer station, they use yours. The customers stay the same, the routes stay mostly the same, but the economics improve almost immediately. That's why acquisitions in this industry aren't just about getting bigger, they're about making the entire network more efficient. Every acquisition fills in another piece of the map. Waste management isn't really operating a fleet of garbage trucks, It's operating a nationwide logistics network. The trucks are simply the part everyone sees. The real business is the network connecting everything behind them. And it doesn't just end there once you own that network. Something unexpected starts happening. Your garbage stops being just garbage and starts becoming energy. By this point, your garbage has already generated revenue several times. You charge the customer to collect it. You transported it through your own network. You buried it in your own landfill. But that is not where the business ends. In reality, the landfill has only just started working. Because the moment garbage is buried, nature takes over. Organic waste, things like food scraps, paper, wood, and yard waste, begins to break down without oxygen. Over time, that process produces a gas made up primarily of methane and carbon dioxide. Left alone, that methane becomes a serious problem. It's a powerful greenhouse gas, significantly more effective at trapping heat than carbon dioxide over the short term. Letting it escape into the atmosphere isn't just bad for the environment, it's something regulators actively try to prevent. So landfill operators do something clever. Instead of letting the gas escape, they collect it. Across the landfill, engineers drill a network of wells connected by underground pipes. As the waste decomposes, the gas is drawn out, much like pulling water from a well. At first, the goal was simply environmental compliance. Today, it's another business. Some landfills burn the gas to generate electricity. Others clean and process it into renewable natural gas, or RNG, a fuel that can be injected into natural gas pipelines or used to power vehicles. In some cases, the gas collected from yesterday's garbage is fueling tomorrow's garbage trucks. It's one of those rare business models where yesterday's operating cost becomes tomorrow's energy source. And for the largest landfill operators, that creates another revenue stream from the exact same load of waste. The customer paid you to collect it. You earned money disposing of it. And years later, it's still producing something you can sell. Not every landfill does this. The economics depend on the size of the landfill, the amount of gas it produces, local energy markets, and available infrastructure. But for the largest operators, landfill gas has become an increasingly important part of the business. Not because it replaces waste collection, but because it extracts even more value from an asset they already own. It's another example of a pattern we've seen throughout this industry. The biggest companies rarely make money from doing one thing. They make money by finding multiple ways to earn from the same ton of garbage. But there's one part of the business that almost everyone misunderstands: recycling. Most people assume it's one of the most profitable businesses in waste management. In reality, it's often one of the most unpredictable. If you've been following along, you might be thinking something. If garbage companies can make money collecting waste, make money disposing of it, and even make money from the gas it produces, then recycling must be even better. After all, you're selling the materials instead of burying them. It sounds like the perfect business. In reality, recycling is one of the most unpredictable parts of the entire industry. Here's why. When your garbage truck empties a recycling bin, the materials don't immediately get sold. They first go to a materials recovery facility, or MRF. This is where paper, cardboard, plastics, aluminum, steel, and glass are separated, cleaned, and prepared for sale. Only then can they be sold to manufacturers that turn them back into new products. But there's a problem. Those materials are commodities. Their value changes constantly. One year, cardboard might be in high demand. The next year, prices fall. Plastic prices rise and fall. Metal prices rise and fall. Sometimes the value of the material isn't even enough to cover the cost of collecting, sorting, and processing it. And there's another challenge: contamination. A pizza box covered in grease, food mixed with paper, plastic bags wrapped around sorting equipment. The more contaminated a recycling load becomes, the less valuable it is, and in some cases, an entire load can end up being disposed of instead of recycled. That's why recycling doesn't generate the stable, predictable cash flow that landfill disposal does. The economics depend on commodity prices, processing costs, and the quality of the material arriving at the facility. For waste companies, recycling is still an important business, but it isn't the financial engine. Collection is, landfills are, everything else is built around those two. And once you understand that, you start looking at the industry differently, because what these companies are really managing isn't garbage. It's infrastructure. By now, you understand how the business works. You buy trucks, you build dense routes, you keep those trucks moving with transfer stations, you own the landfill instead of paying someone else's tipping fees. Then you grow by acquiring companies that strengthen your network. Every piece of the business makes the next piece more valuable. But one question still remains: is it actually a good business? For a small operator, not always. Fuel prices rise, trucks break down, insurance gets more expensive. Drivers are difficult to hire. And if you don't own a landfill, every load you collect ends with another bill. Margins can be thin. But once a company reaches scale, the economics begin to change. Every new route makes existing routes more efficient. Every acquisition strengthens the network. Every truck feeds infrastructure you already own. The bigger the system becomes, the harder it is for anyone else to replicate it. Economists call this economies of scale. It's one of the biggest competitive advantages in the entire industry, and it's why a business that looks simple from the outside becomes incredibly difficult to compete with. More importantly, it's remarkably predictable. People don't stop producing garbage during recessions. Cities don't stop needing waste collection. Restaurants don't stop filling dumpsters. As long as people keep living their lives, someone has to take away what's left behind. That's what makes this business so valuable. It isn't built on trends. It's built on necessity. The next time you see a garbage truck driving down your street, you'll know you're not looking at the business. You're looking at the front end of it. Behind that truck is a network of routes, transfer stations, landfills, long-term contracts, and infrastructure that took decades to build. The truck was never the business. It was simply the part everyone could see. The real business was the network behind it. And that's why one of the most ordinary vehicles on the road belongs to one of the most resilient businesses in the world.